Hi, I'm George Nordhaus, and welcome to Monday Morning. Today we're going to talk about the Gap Elimination Process, GEP. You say, what is that? Well, you're about to find out from Bart Baker, who's our most prolific contributor to our Monday mornings and the Monday morning basics, and he's going to be the contributor and speaker for something called Look and Listen, which you'll be hearing a lot about. Anyhow, Bart is a very uh, successful agency in Malibu, California. If you haven't been to Malibu, you ought to. That's the way people people ought to live. It's wonderful. Anyhow, when he started out, he was a fireman for the first 25 years or so of his existence. I won't go and tell you the whole story. That's his son there when he was a fireman. Then he became an insurance agent, and now he's one of the most well-known insurance agents in the country. He's one of the top farmers agencies anywhere, but he's willing to share everything with us. You can see all this information later on, but my suggestion is you go to his book, The Breakthrough Insurance Agency. I'll show you how to get it. I mean, we're talking about $10 or something from Kindle, but I've probably read it 4 times because this information coming is good, basic, solid information about ideas that make money. And by golly, if Bart doesn't know, nobody does. Bart, I have to ask you a question though. Why do you tell? I mean, if you're going to tell everything that you're doing here, more or less, isn't that going to help your competitors?
Well, good question, George, and I could understand why somebody might feel that way, but I really feel that there are two ways to come from. Really, as far as this goes, or life in general, and one is, lack and scarcity, that there's, not enough to go around, or the other place is prosperity and abundance, and that it doesn't matter, what your competitors or other folks are doing, as long as we are doing the right things for our customer and coming from a place of incredible integrity and doing the right thing at all times. There's no way that we're going to get hurt by anybody else, and we'll actually just continue to grow and prosper, and things are going to continue to spiral up. So no, I've never been concerned about sharing what
That's a
we do.
beautiful comment. I really like what you said. I've always quoted people. I can't remember who wrote it. I doggone it, I can't. But anyway, he said, "You can steal every, excuse me, you can steal everything we're doing, but you cannot steal my mind. So I'll leave you sweating and stealing a year and a half behind." And that's you because by the
I
time
love that, George.
I do too.
That's beautiful.
I think so too. And when they get around to this, it's been my philosophy for years. And agents say, "Well, I can't tell everybody on Monday morning what I'm doing. They're going to get." I said, "Come on, you're way ahead of them all the way down the line. By the time they get around to doing what you're doing, you're going to be another year and a half ahead." So anyhow, you're going to be talking
Exactly.
about something today that I'm vastly interested in because I want to tell all you listeners one thing before we go. To me, this particular presentation is probably the most immediate return. It will give you the most immediate return on the time that you invest in listening to this if you will use the gap elimination process. And I've been around this business a long time, and I can't remember when I have ever said something about this presentation. I know about it because I've read the book about 3 or 4 times. But at any rate, let's start about it. You tell us what is the gap elimination philosophy, please, Bart.
Sure. Well, first, George, using this system in the agency to communicate with your clients on an annual basis is going to be the single most important thing that's going to differentiate us and what we do as far as professional insurance brokers compared to those folks that believe insurance is a commodity. So companies like Progressive and Geico and all of those types of companies do not have any system or ability to be able to get back in front of the customer on a regular basis and review their coverage. We are the ones that are able to do that. So when we employ a system like this and do it on a regular basis, it just continues to solidify the relationship that we have, with that client, and it assures that they made the right decision of going the route that they did, because we promise up front that we're going to cover you right to begin with, best of our ability, but we're also going to check in on a regular basis to make sure that we keep you current. And when we actually do it and they see, these folks weren't kidding, it's the way that they operate, it has an incredible difference, for the better, of course, to our retention and to our bottom line.
Right, right. An interesting thing that we've done on this thing in two ways. One time we said the gap elimination process, the GEP, and the other time we said the gap GAP because it is a gap, but it's a gap. It's two gaps in it. It's a gap and a gap. Anyhow, it's interesting, but either way, you're going to close the gaps, and that's really what you're talking about. Let's talk about the philosophy behind it.
Sure. Well, George, as far as the GAP and the GEP, the GEP is just the acronym for the gap elimination process. And so, if we're using the word gap, rather than just using that big long, gap elimination process, it just kind of simplifies the thing.
I agree.
But so what this first slide does, though, is that it's a tool to be able to communicate with clients on a regular basis and to ask the right type of questions in order to solidify the business and to write additional lines of business. And as we continue to go through these slides, I'm going to share with you a key positioning statement that we're going to say at every review, and that this statement in itself is going to have such a profound effect on your ability to be able to get all of the other lines of business that client has, at least the ability to look at them and review them. And the only way that it's possible to do it every single time is by using, as far as I'm concerned, by using this process and the system that we're going to be sharing today.
Yeah, I didn't realize, you said here this slide says gaps in coverage happen more often. I really didn't realize gaps in coverage happen that often until I began to talk to you, and then I began to look around. We always say you've got to do an annual review and blah, 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 blah. But you're saying it's worse than that or better than that, more than something. I'm not sure which. Right?
Right. Well, exactly right. And that I've never had a review where there has not been either a gap or there's something is completely missing or something that needs to be bumped up a little bit. Coverages need to be amended, or we're not always looking to just increase premium and write another piece of business. A lot of times what happens is we'll meet with the customer and they need to save money. They're falling on harder times, and we could make changes within their policies to save them some money. Yeah. And that's just as important because it actually prevents that customer from wandering off and trying to get a better deal someplace because they need to. Well, we've done it for them. So there's so many different ways to to approach it.
Gee, I got your picture on this. Oh, that's not you. I'm sorry. Where that came from? Huh? That's good. Well, go ahead. Here's your definition, right?
Okay, sure. So the gap elimination process really is a comprehensive review in that we first print out all the different coverages that client has, and then there's going to be 4 different ways that we can do that review, which we'll talk about in a moment. But we want to make sure that we hit absolutely everything that they have. And it says in the center one there that it is the backbone of the agency, but it's the backbone of the agency if you operate like this. And once you operate like this, that it really is the way that you do business, and that you're constantly in front of that customer, either in person or on the phone, and talking about their coverage and making suggestions and building that relationship. It's a fulfillment of the promise that we made initially that that's what we're going to do, but it is also the differentiator that is going to make an incredible difference, not only with the Progressive and Geico's, but also with those brokers that don't operate like this.
Amen.
Because I'm really amazed to see, and I'm sure you've experienced it, that a lot of folks sell a policy and you never hear from them again.
Totally. I got an agency. I'll say this out loud. He probably won't listen to it anyway. My present agent for me personally hardly ever contacts me, and that's another story. One of these days I'll get into that thing, but he doesn't. He's a big firm, and I'm a small potato for him, so I guess he doesn't. That's another story. Well, it is unique. There's no question about it. I think that.
Right, but you know what's really interesting about what you just said, though, George, is that I don't think that you're a small potato by any means, and think about the impact that you have. You talk to hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of people on a weekly basis.
Right.
And rather than you not being happy with this guy and you're letting it known, what if instead you sung this guy's praises because of this vast audience that you have, and this guy is saying, oh my God, the business that I could get from George Nordhaus giving me, some kind words could be incredible. And he's missing out on it. It's incredible.
I know. Let's go forward. I don't want to get any deeper with my.
Okay.
I'm gonna
Okay. I know.
I'm going to kick ass and take names. You listen. I'm going to kick ass and take names. That's what they always say, and I'm going to do it next time. Go ahead.
Hear you. I hear you. So this slide really is just reiterating that there's two huge benefits on using this system. The first one is building relationship, because our business is strictly about relationship.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, our clients can get what we have to offer from just about anybody. It's very rare that a broker has a policy that nobody else can get. So the only thing that we have to offer is us, the relationships that we have, the systems that we have, the staff that's going to interact with them.
Yep.
And it also, again, is going to give us a opportunity to round out that account to be able to write additional lines of business on a regular basis.
Yep. I like that discounts down there too. I know we're going to cut that in a minute, but I don't hear that very often. In fact, I'm going to tell you something. In all my time, I've never had anybody tell me, never had an agent say, hey, we give, if you get all low and homeowners with us, there's a discount. And I know there is, but I've never had anybody tell me that. So maybe I'm a bad example.
Well, that's incredible. Well, George, you need a new agent, buddy.
I guess I'm going to come over to Malibu. Do you do business in New Mexico?
Right. Well, I got to figure something out. I got to figure something out for you.
We'll get you licensed over here. All right.
There you go. But so the gap process is going to be detailed as far as filling the gaps. We've said that quite a few times. But just as important as filling the gaps is finding every single discount that client qualifies for with every policy that we have. And it doesn't necessarily help us immediately, because a lot of times it takes the premium that they're paying down, but that psychic connection that you have with the client that is going to elevate your position in their mind, that this person is truly after my better interest. Yeah. And is trying to get me the very best price that he possibly can. Right. Every time I meet him, initially and at every review, we review specifically for discounts. Mm-hmm. They just have this wonderful respect, for you, and you're definitely missing out if you're not trying to get your client the best price at all time, because that's going to speak directly to retention.
Yeah, what I like about your system. Another thing I like about the system, you tell them about it ahead of time. I mean, before when they come right in with you. You have a video.
Right. So this video we post on our website, first of all. So the website, if anybody wants to see the video, it's a whiteboard video. It lasts about 2 minutes and 19 seconds, and it shows exactly what the gap elimination process is. I am narrating it. There's somebody that's drawing it out. There's a lot of commercials on TV nowadays that use these little whiteboard videos. Uh-huh. But it's a very friendly way to be able to show exactly what it is and how we do business. And so a client or somebody that's just surfing the net could find it. But we also use it to send out to clients. So if we're trying to get somebody into the agency to have a review, we could include an attachment for the video. Sure. And we could also use it for a new client that is considering us. We could send it with a proposal and just say, by the way, I just want you to see how we do business. Check it out. It's very friendly. It's something that just has great, connection with people, and it's not terribly expensive to get these things done, and you can use them for just about anything.
I think it's terrific. Yeah. Who did that? Did Mike Demko do that for you, or?
No. So a company called the Draw Shop did that for me. Yeah. So they, so we come up with the script. Uh-huh. They draw it out, and then you could either use their folks to do the speaking of it, or you could do your own thing. So I chose to use my own voice.
I like that. I think it's a terrific idea. All right, well, let's talk about the approach, the gap. There we go.
Okay, so one thing here that is really interesting to know, at least I found it, is that J.D. Powers and everybody is sort of J.D. Powers. It seems like they measure just about everything in the world.
Yeah, they do.
And they did a survey with clients that are offered a annual review on a regular basis versus those that are not. and it didn't take into consideration that they had the review. It was just that they were offered a review, so they ever actually went forward with it.
Mm-hmm.
And those clients that were just offered a review scored dramatically higher as far as their favorable rating with their agency compared to the agents that did not offer the review.
Mm-hmm.
So the point is that it's incredibly powerful just to connect with the client on a regular basis and reach out and say, it's time for your annual checkup.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to check things out,
right.
Make sure that everything's up to speed, no gaps, get all the discounts you qualify for.
Yep.
And that act in and of itself is going to make a difference. And then, of course, when you both follow through and get it done, that's going to be very powerful too.
Yeah, I agree. And then they get the best possible pricing. Now we're back to commodityism because it is a great tool against that, and that's what I really like about it. All right, let's go ahead.
Right. So with this approach, it starts off with the initial introduction for the review. So we found a lot of different ways to do this. For a time we would just call somebody up, or we'd send a postcard, or we send a letter. And so what we're finding that works the best is to send a letter, and in the letter I state that there's 4 different ways to conduct this review.
Uh-huh.
And number 1 is do nothing, just skip it.
Oh.
And then next to that I put not recommended.
Yeah.
Right. And then number 2 is come in, we'll have an in-person review.
Yeah.
And number 3 would be we can review over the phone, because some folks it's going to be difficult to meet in person, and
right.
It's not ideal, but it's definitely better than nothing.
Yeah.
But then this 4th approach though is what dramatically increased the percentage of people that were willing to discuss and review their policies with me, and that is the suggestion is have Bart send his suggestions on your current policies, and then we'll just follow up. And so we get a ton of these on a monthly basis where the clients send back the letter, and that's the box that they check. They want to get my suggestions on their current policies.
Oh man.
And what that does is it allows the conversation to start. Obviously I want to talk to them about everything that is with us and things that we don't have, but I could look at the policy. My staff is trained also to look at the policy, make suggestions as far as new endorsements that might be out there, other things that they might not have. We send out the letter, and then we follow up, and we use the letter as a basis to start the conversation, and it's just much more efficient and keeps us focused.
Love it. I love it. So then you've got them, you've approached them, and the green light, they write back to you here, so you can they know you're going to go through your process. All right. So what happens then?
Okay, so as far as when they review, and this is kind of basic stuff, but I like to go through the basics and just and just cover everything. But you'll always want to start out, whether or not it's on the phone or in person, with what I'm calling here niceties. So you don't just jump in, hi, how are you, have a seat. So by the way, you have blah 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 blah. So you have to connect on a real personal basis, because that's the only thing that really builds the relationships. So here, I always have notes in my system about the clients and what's going on in their life and their kids and vacations and whatever it is. So I could just familiarize myself, prior to the meeting, and we sit down and say, hey, by the way, how was the vacation to France? And how's John doing? Did he ever get that promotion? And those types of things. So we can connect, and they know that I actually care about them on a personal basis and know about them.
That's nice.
So we just spend a little bit of time on that. And right after that, George, we talk about the 2 things that are going to be required of the review. So one is that we're going to make sure that there are no gaps of coverage. And so that's why we have to go through everything, and that we want to make sure that they are properly insured. And so by properly insured, we could have a homeowner's policy, for example. We've addressed all of the gaps, but if they don't have flood insurance, and we have El Nino coming down, or
whatever.
California, they don't have earthquake. We got to bring those up. Make sure that every line of business is addressed. And then again, like we've talked about a few times so far, is the discount things. We want to make sure that all the discounts are addressed,
Right.
and that they have them.
Right. Okay.
So this next one is something that was, as far as the wording on this was, I have to give credit to Bill Elliott, who showed this positioning statement that he was a advisor to a very large financial services company that I'm not going to name, but he talked about having this positioning statement when we first start the review process. And the statement is, to the client, to say, George, in order to, properly do our risk review today, we're going to look at all of your policies and make sure that the goals that you had when you took them out still apply. Things have a way of changing. So this is going to include your life insurance, your long-term care, disability, whatever we don't have within my agency today. My assistant, in my case, Stacy, is going to follow up with you and get copies of those policies so that we can review, those policies at a later date. And lastly, George, we're going to make sure that these policies are still as efficient, or still are as efficient as they can be from a cost standpoint, because prices do go up and down, and that they still have all the benefits and features that are available today. So does that make sense?
To me, that a complete review of all of their policies that you just said is something that I got to comment on. I know very, very, very few agencies who said, I want a complete review of all your policies. What do you mean? Well, don't you have my policies? Well, how about your life insurance or whatever? That point right there, it seems so simple, and yet they'll send it to you. I guess you guys do write a lot of life, don't you? A lot of life and health and all that.
Sure. So we've made top of the table and core of the table and MDRT multiple times within the agency, but we really are primarily a property and casualty agency. Yeah. In my opinion. But that positioning statement that I just shared with you is what gives us the permission to be able to get all of those other policies, because all we're stating on there is that we want to make, first of all, sure that the goals that they had when they took out those policies still apply. So some people could have a policy that they took out for a certain reason, but that reason is no longer there, but yet they're still paying for this premium. So we can bring it up. So
nobody's contacted. No life contacted them.
Right. Exactly. So it's just like, so why did you take out this policy? And then they share it, and you address it.
Right.
And also that it has because a lot of times, George, we see these policies that were taken out 10, 15, 20 years ago, and they're kind of archaic. There's a lot of new bells and whistles that are available.
Right.
And when we show them that the industry has evolved and there's actually better product out there now, this is what you have, this is what's available. You're not selling, because we never sell, we just advise. Right. And you're showing them these differences, and a lot of people are just so thankful for that, because even though they're not our product, we do have the ability to look at it and assess it and compare it. And this act in and of itself is what allows us to write a tremendous amount of additional business that we don't currently have on the books.
I can see it.
And we're not going about it in a salesy way. We're going about it strictly in a consultative advisory role.
Right. Here's what you do, huh? Okay, I like that as a question. Bring the things up as a question. Oh, that's the question I always, I've quoted before, and I'll quote it again. The number one State Farm agent in history was Cosmo Conti, and he had the 4 words that made 5 words, I guess, and I've said this to you before, and I'd probably drive you crazy with it, but he would say to people when they come into the office, and they did a lot then, he would say to them, and I got to meet with you now, so somebody's already talked about the homeowners, and then he would come back in and he would say, are you happy with your life insurance? Are you happy with? Well, those 4 words, are you happy with? And those 4 words sold him millions, I'm not kidding you, of insurance coverage over his long career. amazing. Are you happy with? There I'll give you those. You can use those. Okay.
No, I love that, but George, what that's also really doing though is that he had a system where
Yeah.
that it was brought up
Right.
on every single time,
Right.
so he didn't miss it, and I'm sure that if he used a different set of words, it was ever, but he was able to make sure that every single person he talked to about that,
Right.
and you talk to enough people, and you're going to get a lot of yeses.
That's why that question. That's why your first point here is. That's what got me thinking about that. That is a good question. Are you happy with? Anyhow,
Sure,
go
I love
ahead.
it.
Go ahead. I'm
I
droning
love
on forever here.
No. So I find that when I do these reviews, that I always like to bring up the questions or bring up whatever we're talking about as a question. So, for example, if we're talking about somebody's, homeowner's policy, for example,
Uh-huh.
and it's insured for $300 a square foot, rather than I'll just say the way that we phrase it is that your house is currently insured for $300 a square foot. How do you feel about that?
Uh-huh.
And they're either going to say, well, that's great, or no, I think it's low, or I think it's high, or typically what they say, well, what do you feel about it? And that's where we can just give our
Got it.
input, obviously being sincere, and that it's it could be that well, from experience, I think you're a little light. You might want to consider 400, whatever. But and here's the important part here, George, about the review process, is that whatever is brought up and that they have an interest in, we never solve for it at that point. All we do is we just capture what the interest was. So on the review paperwork, if they say, yeah, well, let me know what $400 a square foot is going to, impact the policy by.
Uh-huh.
And so we just, make a note of that. And so all throughout the review, we're just capturing, quote this, quote deleting, or quote increasing, or, so we're just capturing all of these things, and we don't want to drone on forever. We just want to, go through it, be professional, and just, get through the process, because we want them to come back again, and we don't want it to be an hour and a half, 2 hour boring thing. We want them in and out and have them leave feeling, man, that was a really good use of my time.
I agree. What if I ask you the question, well, I want 400, thought, what would it cost me to go from $300 a square foot to $400 a square foot? What if I ask you that?
Sure. I say, well, we have to put that through the system, and that's going to take a little bit of time, but what I'm going to do is give you an exact figure, and what we do after the review today is I'm going to send you a post-review letter that is going to memorialize the conversation and is going to address everything that we discussed today with the corresponding premium. So I could, come up with something out the top of my head, but it's just going to be some random number, and I'd much rather prefer to give you an exact figure. So if you wouldn't mind waiting a couple days, we'll send you the letter, and then we'll follow up, and we could address everything that you were interested in discussing.
Well, one of the things that you do is different than I've ever been. I've never been subjected to it because I'm not an agent. But you're saying a square foot on homeowners, for example, and I never had anybody ask me about how much you pay a square foot. I've always asked, well, your home looks like it's going to sell for $1 million or something. And I never. Is square foot used a lot, or is my just way out of it?
Well, as far as the sales price of a home, that doesn't really mean anything, because like if you have a house here in Malibu that's, let's say 3,000 square feet, and you have that same house in the valley, the house could be worth, 5 times more in Malibu, but it's just because it's got a view of the ocean. So, the house itself is going to cost roughly the same to construct.
Right.
So the only thing that really matters is construction cost.
Wow. And so therefore and construction costs by the square foot. All right, well, let's finish up here now. We're getting down to the end here of the Gap review. Let's come up with some really good reminders for them, okay?
Sure. Okay. So by using the review, what it's going to create are 2 things. And if you've been, reading my material as far as the books, or listening to, what you and I have been doing, you'll know that we do not, as an agency, we do not market, we do not advertise, we do not do cold calls, we don't do anything like that whatsoever as far as reaching out and trying to get business. We only work by referral, and people call us all day long wanting to do business with us, or just wanting to discuss their policies. So this gap elimination review process is what creates continuous referrals. So if I review, professionally with a client all of their policies, and we apply additional discounts, and they walk out of my office and they feel like they're bulletproof and they're really insured correctly, and have a lot of confidence, in that creates referrals. They could see somebody right after me and say, "Man, I just had the greatest review with my insurance broker." And typically those other folks say, "What are you talking about? My insurance guy's never reviewed my policies," or so referrals increase dramatically. So the byproduct of that is that it just creates a flow of business, because we pick up those missing policies, and we also are constantly adjusting the policies that they currently have, just by adding additional endorsements, increasing limits, just keeping pace with their life changes.
Well, I know something about your agency that I'm going to tell people right now that they're going to flip, because they're not going to believe it. But I know this, that your agency grows, survives, thrives strictly on referrals, not on new sales, not on these big campaigns or anything, on referrals. Is that correct?
Correct. Right. We don't do anything as far as advertising or marketing. We strictly go by referrals only.
Wow, that's a great thing. And there at the bottom of the page, you see the Gap Elimination Project. That's the other book. Well, I'll show you the books in just a minute. This is the one on coverages, and they're really neat. All right, the Gap follow-up now. Here we go. You ready to go after them? You've got them?
Okay.
What's the next step?
Okay, so this is where we alluded to the post-review letter. So we never give the clients on the spot what it is that it's going to cost to be able to solve any of the things that they might be interested in. Like if, for example, they wanted an umbrella policy, or they wanted to increase limits, or wanted to get a flood policy, or life insurance policy, anything like that. The only thing that we do is we just capture all the information on there, and we let them leave, and then we follow up with that post-review letter. And in that post-review letter, we have the ability to to write down everything that we discussed, what it's going to cost, and when we get back in front of them or on the phone, we just address it in a bullet point fashion. And again, it's not coming across, and this is what we're always trying to avoid, George, is that we never want to come across as trying to sell them something. All we're trying to do is make sure that they are insured correctly, and to be able to build that relationship. So when we intentionally, at this review meeting that we have, is, if you want to, no, this is not a time to buy something. This is just a time to review what you have. And there's always extenuating circumstances that it might be a really important reason that they need to add something at that moment.
Right.
But it's typically not. It's typically not. So when they know that the way that we do business is having the conversation, getting back to them quickly and professionally with what the what the prices are, the benefits and features of what our recommendation is, and then they just look at this post-review letter, and you say, yes on the earthquake, no on the flood, yes, increase the life coverage, yeah, double the umbrella, just go down the list, and it works dramatically better than any other approach that I ever tried.
Let me ask this: do you send a physical letter, printed type letter, or do you send an email?
Yes.
Yes,
well,
yes.
We do
what, you mean both?
We send a physical letter that is, mailed out to them, and we also, scan that letter into an email and send it out to them. So that way, if we need to, when we follow up, if they don't have the letter, we could, typically they can pull up their email from wherever they're at, and just be able to refer to it.
I got you. And I love that last example. You actually can show them. You guys go to www.baker.com. You'll find a copy of that typical letter. How can you do any better than
right. So at the letter, well, what you're going to find there is you're going to get the a copy of the whiteboard video that shows exactly how that how the review process works, and we're in the process of getting the documentation posted, but we want to do it in a little different area because I don't think it would be appropriate to have it be the same place that the clients go to.
Right. Right.
So I'm happy to share that. That isn't a problem. But what you're going to see at the website at the moment is everything that the whiteboard video shows, which is quite a bit. If you were to go on there and watch that 2-minute little video, it's going to be a powerful message to the client on what our differentiator.
Oh, that's great. And of course, you've mentioned this 3 times, but we might as well, as we near the end of this now, we ought to talk about discounts, I guess.
Right.
Pretty important.
Right. Always focus on the discount. So even if you had a client that came in and they left you spending thousands of dollars less, and you actually took money out of your pocket, that's not a bad thing. That's actually a really good thing.
It really is. There's no question about it. Well, carriers offer, you got to know those things. Yeah, I like that. I didn't realize a doctor and policeman, and nurse, or scientist would get better discounts or not worse. No?
What? Yeah, right, exactly. And I always tease the attorneys, by that. I say, I can't believe the carrier's giving you a discount for being an attorney, but they are. So, we could have fun with that. Yeah. But there's a lot of people that I talk to that, really should have these discounts, and they don't. So, again, when we show them that, your current insurance portfolios, $10,000, and with the discounts applied that you're missing, it's $8,000. They say, oh my God, my agent never told me that, and of course they move to us immediately, and they stick.
Oh, that's a beautiful way of going. Well, here's our last program, the last slide, closing the gaps. Close it up here for us. How's that?
Okay, so what we showed as far as this whole system today is that it allows us to stay in front of the client on a regular basis, build their relationship, capture all of the outside business by using that positioning statement, and to genuinely, and we really highlighted the word there, but to make sure that that client is insured correctly, because more important than absolutely anything else, we want to make sure the client is insured right. And it doesn't matter if the client comes in and their first statement out of their mouth is, I'm paying too much, so I just want to pay the cheapest I could pay. Our response to that is, I understand how you feel about that, but I cannot do my job properly and protect your assets if I don't give you the right advice. So if you don't mind, I'm going to advise you correctly, and then it's going to be up to you whether or not you're going to take the advice. And so when we come from that, even those folks that come in starting like that typically get the umbrella policies and do all those other things, because it's not like they don't have the money, they just didn't want to spend it because they didn't have enough reasons and understanding as to why it was so important. And so I can tell you, beyond a shadow, I'm sorry, George, what?
No, go ahead, finish.
Okay, so I can just tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt that I've been doing this now for about 27 years, and that by operating your agency with this mindset and with this system for using the gap elimination process, it will be the single biggest driver of change within the agency to increase policies, increase retention, build relationship, and allow you to connect and speak with clients on a regular basis rather than trying to cold call strangers to buy a policy from you when you have, typically, hundreds if not thousands of people right under your nose that are more than willing to do business with you, but you have to show them a reason of why they need to.
Well, amen. I feel really good about this today because I love to be able to help people because that's my job. But here I realize if people will do this, this presentation you just made will probably do more for people's actually having income and better and overcome that commodity gap. And so I really do think there's a picture of your poor house, that poor thing, it's sitting there in Malibu. I really feel for you. That's pretty tough. All you've got's an ocean, and that is really bad. But at any rate, guys, you can, George. Well, I'm glad you do this. You can go down and get Bart's book. Get both of them. The Breakthrough Insurance Agency is the one that was taken from you today, but you can also get the elephant one. It's down there. Just go into what I do is go into Amazon.com and just put Bart Baker, and you'll see him there. So Bart, once again, I have to thank you for passing it along, for taking the time and effort. Certainly not get paid for this, but for doing it for the good of the cause. I think it's a wonderful thing, and I'm very happy to have you continue. What people don't know is we do this on Saturday morning. I don't know what you guys do on Saturday morning, but Bart and I know what we do. And he works harder than I do because he's got to prepare all this. But wow, a guy will take you Saturday mornings to do this and share himself with everything that you have. What more can you say? So Bart, I do thank you again. And what else can I say? I probably already said too much.
Well, George, listen, I want to, I appreciate all of that. It means a lot to me, but I've also told you many times how grateful and appreciative I am for everything that you do for us, because your library of interviews and your content has been so valuable for me, and I've referred you to so many people to be able to take advantage of that. So it really is just this, symbiotic relationship that's a wonderful thing, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share.
It is totally my pleasure. I wish I